Hi, I'm Goose from Goose Games, and today I want to start a new series that I want to title Are Cheap Games Any Good? Honestly, games are only getting more and more expensive, and whether that's acceptable or not is an entire other discussion that I leave to people who are more qualified to have that discussion. It's also not that I'm a hater towards Nintendo or any other company for getting those prices so high. But I'm just a regular person, and buying every very cool game that comes out in full price is very expensive. So I try not to do that. I also have a couple of friends who also game, but who don't like gaming as much as I do, for example, and who are not willing to spend that much money on gaming. So I wanted to recommend them some games. And also, I love roaming the eShop for cheap games, or mainly in like the sales section, and I love to think, are these games any good? These games cannot be that good if they're going for 99 cents, €2, €5. How good are these games really? So that is why I went through the entire eShop, not the entire eShop. I wanted to try this a couple of months ago as well, and I already had some games downloaded. Some games that are always this cheap, but only there were only just a few there in the list that I'm gonna try out that are always this cheap. Most of the games I bought in some sort of sale, mostly a very huge sale. I love looking for games that I usually go for €20 that are now €2 or something like that, or even less. I love those because I have real hope in those. I also bought some funny games that don't necessarily look too great. That I still kind of want to try out. So yeah, I have a list that currently consists of about 30 games that I bought for the max price of €5. But I bought most of those for €2. Yeah, so that is kind of the intro of the series. That is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to upload weekly, but that's probably not gonna be possible. So with every game that I do want to review, it is a review, of course, from a very casual perspective. I'm also going to be playing some genres of games that I'm really not familiar with, or I might not even like. For example, the first game that I am now going to review is a genre that I don't really like, but I still want to try out as much as possible to be able to recommend as much as possible to you, to my friends, to anyone who would listen. So I want to get a first impression first. So I always record the first maybe half an hour of gameplay, and then I try and play the game for about a week. Maybe not every single day, but I try and get some time with the game, so as not to just judge it on the first couple of screens. I'm gonna try with the games that are more close to my heart. I'll be able to get more in depth than with other games. Like, for example, there are some strategy games. I don't think I've ever played a strategy game before, so I don't think I can already think it's not really my thing. I can already imagine, but still, I want to try them out, test them on story, on visuals, atmosphere, the way it runs, the way it plays. You know, stuff like that. That is kind of objective. That is hopefully objective to the genre. It's like I also wanted to do with this game. Okay, so without further ado, the game that I have played. I mean, you could already see from the title, is The Inner World: The Last Wind Monk, which is a puzzle game, unfortunately. Okay, I don't really know how to tackle this. I have written a script, but it is made up a bit weird. I want to show my first impressions first, maybe, and then get on with the more dry review part of this game. So here you go, or some snippets, at least some sort of impression. There you go. All right, sound really sounds quite good. I hope it's not too loud, but I don't think it is. All right, new game. Exciting. I had coffee somewhere.
That you could possibly imagine.
No,
the one I'm about to reveal to you is by far the strangest. It is a big round hole inhabited by the creatures known as Asposians, and brought to life through the breath of its 4 wind fountains. These fountains,
this looks really good.
Stories of gigantic wind. Even still, the Asposians were quite surprised when these creatures suddenly emerged from the wind fountains and began turning people into stone. Conroy overtook the rule of the land. For 15 years, he protected the Asposians from the wrath of the wind gods. He preached austerity and obedience to appease the gods.
I love the little ghosty there.
Those were dark times.
Those are so cute. I love the art style.
But now
just look at him. Look into his devious eyes.
Is this supposed to be Hitler? Is this supposed to be a Nazi thing?
Brothers and sisters, I see a traitor. It's he and his kind, them with their noses, that summon the...
It's a very long intro though.
As I live
Whoops. I pressed A. I thought at least there was going to be like a skip.
The king of Asposia, Robert. A statue,
Robert. Oh, that one.
and
Oh,
alone.
sweetie.
Well, he's not quite alone. His loyal pigeon is here to free him from this
His loyal
unfortunate
pigeon.
situation.
The game controls. Yes, please. Gonna screenshot this real quick. Help. Nice. Both of these. Select a hotspot. Open menu, open inventory, confirm, cancel, display hotspots. Okay, select hotspot. Open economy. Sort of a puzzle game, I believe. Wait a minute, I did this right. I'm gonna screenshot this as well. And this as well, just to be sure. So I can go back to this. I am the pigeon. What can I do? This thing. I need a Basilian. It's hanging on the middle of a tree, but I still don't really get it. Am I dumb? Is that what it is? I'm doing some stuff, but I don't really get what I'm doing. Right, now I got this. Controls do feel a bit janky. Like I'm never really doing what I want to be doing, you know? Now I'm on the feeding flower, but I want to go to the door and I want to use the door. I want to open the door. I can't seem to make that work. Maybe it's because I don't understand. Okay. Yeah. And now... See, this is what I wanted to do. So, no. Alright. If I do this... yeah. Because it was supposed to be at the... No. Now what? Still don't really get it. Alright, so it is a puzzle game. It looks quite cool. The thing is though, generally, I don't like puzzle stuff. Music is good. I'm gonna figure this out. Gonna try to play it a bit more later, but just downstairs, handheld. And I'll try and figure this out. But I do love the general aesthetic of it so far. Alright, I'll see you soon. Okay, so before I get into the reviewy part, I want to start with the fact, I've said it a bit before, I've said it a bit. It's the fact that I am too dumb for puzzle games. And this game is unfortunately a puzzle game. It's not that I don't like puzzle games in theory, I do like being challenged. And I like finding solutions for puzzles, but I am most of the time just too dumb for them. That is also the case with this game. My issue is that I take lots of things way too literal. In this game, for example, there is an instance where you have to put a cheese wedge underneath the door to keep it from going open. But that wasn't even an option in my brain, because even though the cheese wedge is the perfect shape to get stuck under a door, it's just too soft to actually keep the door closed. It would just get squished. That doesn't matter though, because this game is a game where some people have flutes for noses. So reality is a lie, and it is just a thing that my pea-sized brain cannot handle. Okay, puzzles aside, let me tell you something about this game. So first of all, it is a sequel to The Inner World, just The Inner World without any subtitle. And I only realized that when I was researching the game when writing the script. Whoops. It's a game released in October of 2017, exactly 1 week before Mario Odyssey, to give some perspective. It was developed by Studio Fizbin and published by Heads Up. The story reminded me just a tiny bit of some, historical events that happened between like 1939 and 1945, which immediately makes this game kind of an adult game. It is, however, not too obvious, so it's quite alright for some younger audiences. The PEGI rating is at 12 years, though, do with that whatever you will. Okay, so the story goes as follows. The evil leader Emile wants to persecute and kill the flute noses. He's telling all the non-flute noses that they're connected to some dark forces or something. This one flute nose, called Robert, has to look for the last wind monk that can save the flute noses and the whole of Asposia. That's the country this is all happening in. Because, he has to save the flute noses, because first of all, he is a flute nose himself, and if I understand it correctly, flute noses, give clean air to the entirety of Asposia, so if they'd all be wiped out, then nobody would get air. But, the haters don't realize that, or don't believe it or something, I don't know. in order to find that wind monk, he has to solve a bunch of puzzles with his pet pigeon Peck and his side chick Laura, whom I've honestly just met at the point where I'm at in the game. I don't think I'm too far because I've only just met this Laura girl. But yeah, a big selling point for me in any type of game are visuals and atmosphere and all of that. You know, this game honestly nails that. You've got some cool cartoon styles. The music is really cool as well. I really enjoy that. You know, even though it's normally not my thing, the color palette is quite dim. Like, it's a bit faded, but that really just sets the tone. It looks perfect within the story, even though I usually like some stuff like Splatoon, Animal Crossing, which is quite vibrant, but this is quite dim, but it fits the story really well, so it's within the atmosphere, it's perfect. I also do like the fact that there's voice acting, and it is also really well done, so, you know, not every game has it to begin with, and then has good voice acting, so, you know, this is really cool. Okay, now, unfortunately for me, but back to puzzles and just general gameplay. Okay, so as I've said, I am bad at puzzles, so lucky me, there is some sort of guide, and a really helpful one. The guide kind of nudges you in the right direction. It doesn't immediately tell you exactly what to do or exactly what it means. You know, that is usually the sort of stuff I need. I kind of need to know what is the game thinking, what are the developers thinking. Like sometimes some type of phrasing will steer you on to what the game is trying to have you do. I do have to say though, for a game that is probably aimed at all the kids or straight up adults, the Robert can kind of be belittling. He makes some remarks when you try to do something that won't work, like some really obvious, that won't work, like in that sort of voice as well. I think that is mainly just a Robert thing, but it still made me feel a bit weird. Also, whenever I'm at a new location, I go over all of these hotspots. You know, there are a lot of hotspots that you can interact with. It's either people or items that you can use to solve the puzzles. And, you know, I always go over all of them, press the magnifying glass to get more information. And then you sometimes get really useful stuff. Like, Robert would use a certain word that makes you think, oh, alright, I might hold on to this item because I might be able to use it in a puzzle at some point. But sometimes he says stuff like, that's the door, and I think, yeah, of course, I'm well aware, thank you so much for sharing. You know, those type of things really make me wonder what type of audience this game is aimed at, but you know, it clearly wasn't me, so I'm gonna stop talking about this stuff I don't know anything about. I will, however, trust the reviews on Steam and on Metacritic. So, you know, I guess the puzzles aren't bad at all. There is one thing that I do really want to talk about, and those are the controls. You know, with this game being a point-and-click game, it doesn't really control smoothly on the Switch. Definitely not when playing docked. This is the most prominent when trying to interact with the hotspots. Whenever I want to use an object or talk to a person, I have to, you have to select that hotspot. When using buttons, you have to go through all of the hotspots near you with the L and R buttons, before even sometimes realizing you're standing too far from the object or person, having to go stand a bit closer to them or to the item, and then having to go through all of the hotspots again. Games like these really do suffer on consoles. I am 100% sure though that this runs so smoothly on PC because, you know, it's a point and click, so you just point to it and click. But it is really just annoying when using a controller. However, I do have to say, I did play the game handheld for a second, and you can use the touchscreen to touch and to immediately select the objects. It isn't perfect because you still have to go from pressing the buttons to then pressing. It's not ideal, but it is way better than using just the buttons and using it docked, because obviously you can't do it then. You know, games of this type should kind of get an update for the Switch 2, so that you can use mouse mode. That would make these so much easier to play, so much better. But, you know, I don't think anybody's gonna update a game from 2017. Well, at least no company. That isn't Nintendo, of course. In conclusion, if you are into kind of bleak puzzle games and you own a Steam account, go for it. 100%. I've bought it on the eShop for €1.50, but I have seen it on Steam for 99 cents, and I really believe it controls way better over there. You know, trusting that the puzzle aspect of this game is really good, and I am just too oblivious, I am giving this game 6 out of 8 donuts. Okay, thank you so much for watching to this video. If you're interested in this type of stuff, not necessarily puzzle games though, I think I've made it clear that I'm really not into those games. But if you're into these cheap games, then please drop a subscribe, because I will be making more in the future. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. This was Goose from Goose Games, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!